All right, welcome everybody. I'm Larry Knox, newest board member. I represent the Northeast District. I just got appointed earlier this month to the Police Accountability Board. I'm proud to announce I'm here with Arlene, who'll speak a little bit after me. Duwaine Bascoe is our new acting manager. Duwaine will be taking over as the lead staffer here at the agency during the duration of the investigation of our previous executive director. We're very, very proud that we have Duwaine in this role. Our board, asked him to do this earlier in the week. We voted earlier in the week for this to happen, and with the full support of everybody here at the agency, we're going to be able to move forward and get what the community, what our alliance, what City Council, and what all of us on the board want, which is movement in regards to the activities of the Police Accountability Board.
Okay. I too am delighted to be here representing the board and the community. We are going to do all that we can to make sure that with Duwaine at the helm, things are going to continue to move forward, and we will be able to open soon. With that, I'm going to step back.
Yeah. Duwaine.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome to PAB. Like I said before, my name is Duwaine Bascoe. That's D-U-W-A-I-N-E, last name Bascoe, B-A-S-C-O-E. I am the acting manager of PAB and as well as the chief of investigations. Now, there's been a lot said about PAB. However, this is the first time that the senior staff has had an opportunity to speak for ourselves. We understand the criticisms of the past, but here at PAB, we are focused on the present and the future of PAB. When the community pushed for PAB, they asked for simple things. They asked for us to take complaints, investigate those complaints, and provide oversight and recommendations for RPD's policies and procedures. They asked for these things in the hopes that it would bring forth transparency and accountability to our public safety systems. Today, I am excited and proud to announce that through the hard work of senior staff, our other staff members, and the board, that starting on June 20th, we will make that request a reality. First, as it pertains to complaint intakes, we will begin taking complaints on June 20th. Now, anyone that has watched any of the city council meetings understands and knows the difficulties that PAB went through in getting our complaint intake system signed and the delays in getting it implemented. As of right now, that system is still not operational. However, through the dedication and hard work of senior staff members, we have found and developed an interim intake policy that is going to be up and running weeks ahead of schedule, which allows us to start taking complaints on June 20th. Second, in regards to investigation, our investigation training academy will wrap up in mid-June. This will allow our investigators to review these complaints, interview witnesses, and conduct an investigations of the allegations that the community has set forth. However, I have to be poignant in this matter. We cannot conduct full investigations without the cooperations of RPD. In the past, we've made several attempts and had several dates for meetings set forth, only for them to be canceled. Presently, we have secured the assurances of Chief Smith as well as President Melendez that there will be a meeting on June 6th. At that meeting, we will reach a consensus regarding body-worn camera being turned over to PAB in a timely manner, access to databases and records of the RPD, as well as a schedule for police ride-alongs for the staff here at PAB in order to make sure that the staff fully understands what an officer goes through. Third, our Public Affairs Division have crafted a plan that will be implemented over the next several weeks, where we will meet the community where they are. We will be at public events, public buildings, and we will take the information about how to file a complaint, what misconduct looks like, and be able to engage the community one-on-one so that they understand the importance of PAB and how they can work with us. Lastly, for our Policy and Oversight Division, they've already started. As you are aware of yesterday's postings in regards to the recommendations for RPD's 2022 protest and mass gathering policies. I won't go into that too much, as our Chief of Policy and Oversight, Mike Higgins, will go further into that. I want to thank you for coming forth today, and I want to thank our board, our senior staff, and all of our staff members for their dedications and their continued work during this difficult time. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Michael Higgins. That's M-I-C-H-A-E-L-H-I-G-G-I-N-S. I'm the Chief of Policy and Oversight at the Police Accountability Board. Yesterday, the Police Accountability Board released our report and recommendations regarding RPD's announced changes to protest policies. Our report contains 35 recommendations to improve Rochesterians' ability to safely exercise their First Amendment rights. We call upon RPD to release their actual written policies so that we can further evaluate them, to coordinate with the PAB to audit their training, and to solicit and receive and engage with community criticism and critique of their policies. We recommend that all final policies be clearly defined, that they eliminate potential loopholes, that they limit or eliminate opportunities to exercise discretion, and they be implemented with sufficient training and consequences to ensure that the rules are fully followed. I'll be happy to take questions about our specific recommendations after this full presentation. Thanks.
All right, so we're going to go into our Q&A portion of the event. So if you guys have any questions, Alex?
I'll start with you, Mr. Bascoe, if I may. Can you walk through this interim intake process about how people can file complaints? Do they go on the PAB's website? Do they have to come meet in person? What's a step-by-step process about this interim intake process to file complaints?
Sure, thank you. We have developed an intake form that will be available on our website. Community members can file this form either by mail or by email. They can also call in to the PAB's line. They can leave a message, and case manager will return their calls within 24 hours.
For last year's budget, the KPIs listed 480 complaints as the expectation for the year. Do you still believe that to be an accurate estimate of how many complaints our PAB will take in the course of the year?
Based upon the information and us working at full strength, I do believe that's a benchmark that can be reached.
Back to KPI, what is your current number of investigators? Is that full staff? Was that number reached by virtue of what the KPI was expected to be? What is the number based on?
The number is based on several different factors, but one of which is being at full staff. Currently, we are not at full staff, and as many of you know, there is a hiring freeze as of right now that we are hoping will be lifted.
How many do you have now, sir?
Currently, we have 4 staff attorneys, we have 5 investigators, and we also have a forensic technician.
So you'll begin able to take complaints on the 20th, and you're wrapping up the investigation academy. What's the timeline moving complaint, when will you be able to do something about it or just move it forward?
Sure. So the timeline as far as when we receive the complaint, they'll be notified within 24 hours by the case management team in order to gather additional details from them. Now, one of the things that we have to stress is that we can begin speaking with witnesses, but as far as the data sharing and access to certain types of information, that's going to require RPD's participation and cooperation, which we're hoping to secure and finalize on June 6th.
If everything goes according to plan, though, you secure that, when would investigations be able to, in an ideal world, everything goes your way, come to the 6th?
Sure. Depending on the severity of the matter that's complained of, within that 24 hours is when they're going to be returned, their information, is when a case management will reach out to them. At that point in time, depending on the length of the information, the dearth of information that's provided, the investigators will then be assigned to that particular allegation, and the investigation will begin at that point.
Duwaine?
Yes.
Berkeley Green from Channel 10. So you said you start taking complaints on June 20th?
Yes.
If somebody has a complaint right now, who do they call?
They can still contact the PAB's line as of right now. The website is still up right now, and we're working to get the intake form on the website. There is a form that's on there right now, but it's going to be replaced by our new update form. Right now, though, we've already taken in several calls, and I will say that those calls that we've taken in already will be our top priority when we open.
So you can't, if somebody has a complaint today and they call your office today, you'll take that call, but you won't start investigating until the 20th?
Well, we cannot start investigations without the completion of the investigation training, which is mid-June, as well as the cooperation with RPD. But those information, they will be contacted. They will, someone will, I wouldn't say someone, case management will contact them.
Gino and then Alex.
Is it true there's currently a state investigation into the chairperson, Johnny Wilson?
I cannot speak to any type of investigations going on regarding the state or any type of internal investigations regarding personnel.
Thank you. So on that note, Mr. Bascoe, you stressed that cooperation with RPD is very important. At the same time, I was just speaking to Mike Mazzio, president of the Rochester Locust Club Union. To my knowledge, speaking with him, there's still a lawsuit pending between them as well as your guys' power to actually discipline and do other things like access stuff during investigations. If that court case fails in your guys' favor, where would you go from here to still serve the purpose of the city, or speaking to the union as well, trying to get them on board with stuff?
I'll let the courts speak for themselves, but in regards to our ability to discipline, we don't need the ability to discipline in order to investigate, and we've already received assurances from Chief Smith as well as Mayor Evans and President Melendez that RPD, the Mayor's office, and City Council are in full support of PAB conducting these investigations, and we believe that they are honorable, so we believe that we have the cooperations of all three moving forward.
You mentioned during your introduction recognizing that there were some criticisms against the PAB about when personnel, when money's been spent or whatever, and a board that's about transparency going forward. How do you hope as a board to assuage any community concerns and so it doesn't impede the work that you guys are trying to do?
So, well, the criticism of the past, there's nothing that we can do at this point in time regarding those. All we can be judged on is what we do currently and moving forward. And moving forward, we have the capabilities as a staff and as a board to make sure that the money that City Council has approved, that the Mayor has indicated his full support for, are being used for the complaints and investigations that the community needs.
Duwaine, can you bring us up to speed on the status of Connor Reynolds?
I cannot comment on a personnel investigation matter.
You've essentially assumed his role as the interim executive director?
I am the acting manager at this point in time, and I will continue to be the acting manager until the executive director returns from his leave, or so long as the PAB and the board see fit to have me in this position.
Chase Howell, 13 Wham. So a question I have too, is just hearing from Berkeley, as well. What has been really done at PAB since it started beyond hiring? If complaints are continually being stacked on the table, what has been done?
Sure. Well, building a agency from the ground up is no small task. There's a lot that goes into it, from developing policies and procedures to developing internal policies and procedures to as small as the mundane as far as cleaning up. Just yesterday, our staff members, one of our case managers, was vacuuming in this very room in preparation for today because we still don't have access to the city's personnel to conduct these types of cleanings. So from the ground up, we've worked tirelessly to make sure that when we open our doors, we can hit the ground running.
And I guess so. Part of the $5 million, what all of that has been spent? If how much of that $5 million has been spent? I'm just curious.
Well, as far as the money is concerned, the $5 million is concerned. Currently, we have a remaining amount of roughly $2.35 million remaining. That doesn't mean that the remainder was spent, but there are requisitions that are in the works that still are awaiting approval, but the $5 million has not all been spent at this point in time.
Well, just, I know you can't speak in specifics of the personnel issue, but whether by city council or here, has the entity been chosen that's supposed to do the investigation, the allegations, whatever?
In regards to the investigation, internal investigation with the allegations, there has been a law firm that has been tasked with doing that investigation. So any questions about the investigation, the time frame, all that, we have the contact information we can give you afterwards for that law firm. There has been a firm that has been hired to do the investigation in regards to the allegations.
And was that, I forgot the process, was that a city council choice or a PAB choice?
There was a, we both talked about it together. There was a decision made by council, I think a week ago Friday, where that firm was announced, and the lawyer that was hired was also the lawyer that we were recommending to be hired, or the firm, with the local partner that we recommended also to be hired to do that investigation.
Gary beat me to it.
Oh, all right.
I have a question for you again, Mr. Bascoe, please. So you had mentioned, of course, and we heard from City Council, they froze hiring, and I believe for the most part, any spending from PAB now has to be approved by the council president. Are you at all concerned that may politicize PAB or get in the way of its purpose? Like, how do you reassure with people of the city that you can still fulfill your guys' purpose if City Council is now more involved than I'm sure you guys were hoping for at first?
Well, any type of internal disputes or bickering will remain internal. However, I will say this, that when the public pushed for the PAB, they wanted a fully funded PAB. And the mayor agrees with that based on his own statements. So we believe that City Council will do the right thing and make sure that the community gets what they deserve and what they wanted, which is a fully funded PAB.
Cycling back to my first question about the investigative staff, let's say hypothetically you were fully staffed or whatever that number should be. Again, what is the number of investigators? Is there something out there that you use to choose how many investigators you need, whether it's annual complaints with police, or how did you ultimately say X is the number we need of investigators?
Sure. There were several factors that went into the personnel decisions regarding investigations, including the number of complaints that were coming in, not only from RPD, but from all other reasonably situated cities in regards to their police staff, their civilian, and the types of complaint and the number of complaints that went into it.
I just want to make something.
All right, so you're all raising your hands.
Sorry.
First.
And I just want to make something clear. So June 20th is when we can really start seeing something to begin rolling. We're going to start seeing investigations happening. Is that fair to say?
June 20th, we will open our doors for complaints. We will start taking in complaints, provided, as far as the investigation is concerned, a full investigation being warranted that RPD on June 6th, we can come to the agreements versus those 3 factors that I outlined. Access to body-worn cameras, access to databases and records, as well as the time schedule for ride-alongs.
I'll add something to that. As a board, we've had a lot of conversations with council, everybody in the board, including Shawnee Smith, who's our chair. She had some medical appointments or patients that she was seeing, so she wasn't able to make it today. But with council, with our liaison, Kim Smith on city council, to make clear that that meeting with the police chief, which is something that we've all been really focused on getting happen. So we've been having constant conversations and improving the relationship with council. Anybody who saw the hearing, with the budget hearing, know there's frustration in council. We've talked to council members since then as a board and as a staff to address those concerns and the community's concerns. So I just want people to realize that with our allies in the Police Accountability Alliance, with people in the community, with city council members, and with our own board, we realize the sense of urgency that people have about us moving forward. And this is where we are at right now with that happening, especially with the meeting with the police chief next month.
With the search for a police chief ongoing, do you have any assurances from city council or mayor that P&B is a priority in their search, and if and when a new chief comes in?
Yeah. We're in conversations with the mayor and city council about how that process works and us having a voice in that process.
So, two-part question here. So, as investigations are going forward and PAB subpoenaing documents from the Rochester Police Department, what sort of access will the public have to that information, the body-worn camera footage, the draft policies, things like that? How will the public and PAB interact on those kind of documents?
The public wants access to body-worn camera footage. They want access to databases and records. I cannot provide a blanket statement in regards to everything that they will have access to, but part of PAB is to make sure that the community has full transparency and confidence in the RPD. So that being said, they will have access to certain body-worn footage, body-worn footage. To the extent has to be determined on a collaborative basis between PAB and RPD.
And we're talking about transparency, from Rochester Police. We've talked to community members that saying PAB isn't being transparent. What is your reaction to that? What's your message to them?
Contact us at PAB, and we're more than willing and able to answer questions in regards to our functions. We can't rely on innuendos and shadowy tweets. We deal face-to-face, and we deal one-on-one, and we are what we say we are. We are here to provide accountability and transparency, and that's what we do.
Well, Arlene, I could talk from the board perspective, too. I know there's been concerns about transparency with both similar names with the Police Accountability Board, the 8 members of that. There is that difficulty when you're talking about personnel matters. We want to make sure that the privacy and the personnel concerns of privacy that somebody who has an allegation against a police officer or, and the privacy that we would have for that. It's the same if there's, things within the board itself where there's, allegations. So being public about talking about those you cannot do, but we're going to be more clear and going forward have been when we have our executive sessions of the Police Accountability Board, explaining why, things that are personnel matters we have to talk about behind, behind closed doors. But explaining that better to the public is something that we've committed to this month going forward in doing that, and that was a concern that we heard within the board and from the community that we are addressing as a board.
And just one personal note that I wanted to put out. You all know that we're building this from the ground up. It's very hard to lay the track, build the train, be the engineer, and put the people on board. The way we lay it out has got to be as close to perfect as possible. And I understand the concern of the community. What I would like to hear very much, rather than when are we going to open, is when people are saying, what else can we do to help you get to that point? We are almost there. Everything that we wanted, everything the community wanted, that we have worked so very, very hard to get, is just this far away. Yes, we have a few critics. I'd much prefer to see people critique what we do to help us build, rather than criticize what we do to tear it down.
I have a question for you, sir, if I may. Sure. I'd like to switch gears to the protests and mass gatherings real quick. There's a lot of the analysis that you guys were talking about. You know, I know we can't sum up everything, but do you guys wish, you know, there were changes announced that we reported on with City Hall and the police department, but do you guys feel like they don't go far enough in certain areas, or were you guys not included enough in drawing this stuff up? What needs to change, or what was your main take from the new announcements in the protest response?
Thank you for your question. I think the main thing we'd like to see is the final written policies. So there are announced policy changes, but the details are not clear. And subsequent statements suggest that perhaps the bans on particular weapons are not complete bans. There might be exceptions to those bans. We need to see the final written policy, both so that we can evaluate it, so the community can evaluate it, and so that we can ensure that police officers have been properly trained and that these policies have been properly communicated to them. Because if a policy has been implemented, every police officer should have seen it as well.
So you guys were not involved in any of this decision making when they first released it? That was the first you heard about it?
That's correct. Yes. As Corporation Counsel sat on connections with Evan Dawson on April 29th. She viewed us as non-operational. We are operational. We're here. Our role is to evaluate police policies and procedures, and we should be included in that development now and going forward.
So as part of the five-pillar plan when the PAD was first announced, there was the talk of the disciplinary matrix. As far as I understand, that doesn't require actual disciplinary powers to develop that matrix. It's more of a policy recommendation for RPD. Past year and a half, I've heard really nothing about it. So is there any plans for that, where you're going forward on the disciplinary matrix?
So we do have a draft of the disciplinary matrix. We've received comments on it from our consultants at SMK. We're incorporating those comments. Part of our 30-day plan toward operation is to release that disciplinary matrix, first to our board for their comments and suggestions about that board, then subsequently to the community, to RPD, to the Locust Club, so that we can implement it. And your characterization of it as a recommendation under the current legal structure is accurate. That's how it would operate.
What's the timeline do you expect for that?
So we would hope to do that in the next month.
Just returning to the protest for a minute, let's say hypothetically you get the written policies from RPD and there's still X number of issues. Practically what happens then? Under the charter or whatever, do you have any power to impose your recommendations upon RPD, or is it just become a matter then of trying to come to the table and make it work?
Yeah, so the charter does not give us the power to impose policies on RPD, and I think for good reason. We make recommendations. The charter does require that the chief respond to our recommendations in writing, and there's a process set forth there. He's supposed to explain, the chief, whoever they may be at the time, is supposed to explain why they agree or disagree with our policies and post that on the website. That increases democracy, that increases public participation, that increases opportunity for the community to engage on the policy. What else are we going to do when we get those policies? Well, we're going to evaluate whether or not RPD is following their own written policies. So part of what we're going to do in the Policy and Oversight Division is not just look at the policies on paper, but look at their implementation. And that's where access to information is critical, right? We need access to their databases so that we can conduct audits of their compliance with their own policies. We need access to their training so that we can see how officers are trained and whether or not they're adequately equipped to follow the policies. And then we're also going to evaluate, discipline as it relates to policies. So how are officers disciplined when they violate policies?
Just to be clear on that, because that sort of circles back to some of the issues raised earlier. RPD hasn't said, or haven't, no, you can't have it. It's just been, for whatever reason, the difficulty of getting to the table together at the time to discuss, correct?
We've asked for it, and they have not provided it. We have this meeting on June 6th. So we hope to receive those policies now. They've also, I think at the budget hearing, Chief Smith announced that he expects to release those policies in the next 10 days or so. So we look forward to evaluating those if and when they're released.
But even beyond that, I mean, just the other stuff we're talking
Yeah.
about, access to records on a broader basis,
Right.
et cetera. Has RPD said, no, you can't have it, or it's just an issue of getting together and making it happen?
What we know now is that they're committed to meeting with us on the 6th to give us that information, so we haven't received it yet. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. That will conclude the Q&A portion of this event. You guys, if you need time one-on-one with any of the speakers that were here today, just